بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. Today is ليلة الخميس 18 من شهر محرم لعام 35 و400 وألف من الهجرة. Today being the 18th night of the month of Muharram, the night preceding Thursday in the year 1435 after Hijrah, corresponding with the 20th, I believe. Today's the 20th, Abu Salim? The 20th of the month of November in the year 2013. And today, inshallah, we'll start our class, which will be nothing more than a reading of Tafseer al-Sa'di, that is well known by Taysiir al-Karim al-Rahman fi Tafseer Kalam al-Mannan, the facilitation of the generous and the merciful in explaining the speech of the one who gives blessing. And this tafsir was authored by Abu Abdullah Abdul-Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, from the well-known scholars of the 1400s of Hijrah, the 14th generation after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was born in the year 1307 in the city of Unayza in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and he passed away rahimahullah in the year 1376. He was born in the year 1307 and he passed away rahimahullah in the year 1376. And he's a scholar who wrote many of a book, and I don't think that any of the Salafi are unaware of who he is and his prestige and his level amongst the scholars of our time. And as we said, this book will be nothing more than a reading of his tafsir, and it will be the reading as performed by Muhammad al-Afraj, who some of you might know as the one who explained Durus al-Muhimma that they have translated into English. And the first 6 chapters of the Quran, i.e. of Tafsir al-Sa'di, from Al-Fatiha to Al-An'am, have been translated, so they can be found in the various bookstores, but the complete book has not been done yet. And as far as the audio, then we've gotten it from islamhouse.com, and if one were to perform a search for a reading of Taysiir al-Karim al-Rahman, then he would find it as well. And due to the fact that the one who is reading this tafsir, that we will translate his reading, didn't read the introduction as written by As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, then we see it suitable to read his introduction based on the fact that it will show us the author's methodology in what he wrote in his tafsir. So he said, Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-furqan al-fariq, bayyin al-halal wal-haram, wal-su'ada wal-ashqiya wal-haqqa wal-batil, wa ja'alahu bi rahmatihi hudan lin-nasi umuma, wa lil-muttaqina khususa, min dalal al-kufri wal-ma'asi wal-jahl, ila nur al-imani wal-taqwa wal-ilm. The author rahimahullah, he started off by saying all praise to Allah, the one who has sent down upon his servant the criteria. Al-Fariqu bayn al-halal wal-haram, the one that has separated between the halal, or that which is halal, and that which is haram. It is separated between those who will be happy and those who will be sad, i.e. in the hereafter. And it is separated between the truth and the falsehood. And he has made it, i.e. his furqan, a mercy. He has made it by way of his mercy, a guidance for all mankind in general, and for those who have taqwa in specific, a guidance from the misguidedness of kufr and away from the disobedient and ignorant. And he has made it a light and a form of taqwa and a form of knowledge. The author, he goes on to say, وَأَنزَلَهُ شَفَاءً لِلصُّدُورِ مِنْ أَمْرَاضِ الشُّبَهَاتِ وَالشَّهَوَاتِ وَيَحْصَلُ بِهِ الْيَقِينُ وَالْعِلْمُ في المطالب العاليات وشفاء للأبدان من أمراضها وعللها وآلامها وأسقامها. The author, rahimahullah, he said, and he sent down, i.e. this book or this Furqan, as a cure for what is in the chest, from all of the sicknesses of doubt and desire. And he has made it accomplishable by way of it certainty and knowledge in all of the high affairs. And he has made it a cure for the bodies from all of their sicknesses as well, and all of their weaknesses and pains and diseases. The author, he goes on to say, وَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّهُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ وَلَا شَكَّ بِوَجْهٍ مِنَ الْوُجُوهِ وَذَلِكَ لِاشْتِمَالِهِ عَلَى الْحَقِّ الْعَظِيمِ فِي أَخْبَارِهِ وَأَوَامِرِهِ وَنَوَاهِهِ. He says that, and he, i.e. Allah Azza wa Jal, has informed us about this book that there is no doubt in it, and there is no unsurety in any form, and that it is comprising on all aspects of truth in what it tells us, and what it commands us, and what it forbids us. And in order not to make this just some, boring reading, I just want to re-emphasize some of the points we covered so far. That the author, rahimahullah, told us that the book of Allah is a criteria between all aspects of halal and haram. So when you want to know what's halal and haram, what do you look towards? You look towards the Quran. The Quran is the definition of those who will be happy and those who will be sad. So if you want to know the qualities that will guarantee you happiness, whether it be in this life or the next, or the qualities that will ensure your depression and your becoming from those ashqiya or those saddened individuals, then you need to look no further than the Quran. If you want to know the difference between the truth and the falsehood, is something right or is something wrong, then you need to look no further than the Quran. These are some of the qualities of the Quran that are very important that we pay attention to. Knowing right from wrong, halal from haram, truth from falsehood, how to obtain happiness and how to push away sadness, all of this is in the book of Allah. And for that reason, the author, he said he made it a guidance for mankind in general. And this is important. The Quran is a guidance for mankind in general. The Muslim, the Kafir, the old, the young, the male, the female. Anyone who wants guidance, then this book was sent down for him. And because of, or by way of this, we recognize the mistake of those individuals who think that the guidance or the way to give da'wah to the non-Muslims is in something else other than this book. The Quran is the way we give da'wah. The Quran is the way we obtain guidance for mankind, not in any other form or fashion. And this is why Allah Azza wa Jalla sent this book down. So it's a guidance for mankind in general. But since it was the believer that benefits from it the most, then he says, and he made it for those who have taqwa, a form of guidance in specific. Meaning that although all of mankind can obtain guidance through the Quran, since it's the one that has taqwa, he will be the one who gets guidance from it the most and is the most benefited by it. A guidance that will take him away from the misguidedness of disbelief and of sin and of ignorance, and will guide him to the light of iman, taqwa, and knowledge. As we learned in the class of Durus al-Muhimma, he says, أَنزَلَهُ شِفَاءً لِلصُّدُورِ. Allah sent down the Quran as a cure for what is in the chest, i.e. a cure for the hearts. The doubts and the shubuhat that come in our hearts, the way we push away these things, the way we push away the uncertainty we have about things, the way we push away and defend ourselves from following our desires, is through this Quran. So this Quran, the more you read it and the more you understand it, you'll obtain this certainty and you'll obtain knowledge. And you'll be able to understand all of the high and important things in life. This is all through the Quran. And not only is it a cure for what is inside of our chest, i.e. our hearts in the metaphorical sense, if you want, but it's also a cure, an actual physical cure for our bodies. So in the recitation of the Quran, it can be used to cure our sicknesses and our weaknesses and our diseases and pains. Then the author, he said, and he explained that meaning that Allah explained that there is no doubt in this book. Everything in this book is in the utmost of surety. Just by simply hearing it, you can attest to its validity. And there's no unsurety in it from any aspect. Anything that Allah said in this book is of the utmost correctness. And the reason why there's no unsurety in it is because this book contains nothing but the absolute truth in all aspects of it. And then he went on to show us that the aspects of the Quran are three. The things or the topics or the things that the Quran talks about are three. It's either telling us something, generally, ikhbar, explaining something to us, the stories of Musa, the stories of Noah. It's explaining something to us, or it's commanding us to do something, or forbidding us from doing something. Every ayah in the Quran will fall into one of these three categories. Explaining something to us, commanding us, or forbidding us. In whatever category of the Quran it might be, then it's guaranteed to be the absolute truth. The author, rahimahullah, is showing us this introduction for a benefit, because it's trying to encourage us to give this book importance. If this are the qualities of this book, then it's necessary that we pay attention to the meanings that are going to come in its explanation. The author, rahimahullah, Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, وَأَنزَلَهُ مُبَارَكًا فِيهِ الْخَيْرُ الْكَثِيرُ وَالْعِلْمُ الْغَزِيرُ وَالْأَسْرَارُ الْبَدِيعَةُ وَالْمَطَالِبُ الرَّفِيعَةُ فكل بركة وسعادة تنال في الدنيا والآخرة فسببها الاهتداء به واتباعه. He says that Allah Azza wa Jalla sent down in this book that is blessed all types of good and a great amount of knowledge and all of the inventive or innovative secrets of life. The advancements and the things that you need to make your life better, all of this is in the Quran. It has all of the high goals that mankind might aspire to. Anything that is high and lofty in its level, then the Quran has called to it. It is full of blessing and happiness that can be obtained in this dunya as well as in the hereafter. Wallahi, these are themes that so simple in their wording, but we should pay attention to them. That even in the simplicity of what he's saying, there's a lot of benefit. That the happiness in this life is not obtained through our jobs or through our wealth or through our families, but the happiness in this life is obtained through adhering and accomplishing the goals and the values that are set forth in the Quran. So because of it, and the reason why you get this happiness in this life and the next is because of following its guidance. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, وَأَخْبَرَ أَنَّهُ مُصَدِّقٌ وَمُهَيْمِنٌ عَلَى الْكُتُبِ السَّابِقَةِ فَمَا شَهِدَ لَهُ فَهُوَ الْحَقُّ وَمَا رَدَّهُ فَهُوَ الْمَرْدُودُ لِأَنَّهُ تَضَمَّنَهَا وَزَادَ عَلَيْهَا. He said that this book, i.e. the Quran, is a confirmation and a guaranteer of what went before it from the previous books. If you want to know what's correct, look to the Quran. As far as what's in the Torah or the Injil, if you want to know what's correct, look to the Quran. So he says, so whatever the Quran testifies to, then it is the truth. And whatever the Quran rejects, then it is rejected. And that is because the Quran contains everything that was in those books and addition. And additions, meaning everything we have is greater than what they had. We have what they had and more. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى فِيهِ يَهْدِي بِهِ اللَّهُ مَنْ اتَّبَعَ رِضْوَانَهُ سُبُلَ السَّلَامِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla, he says, He guides by it, Allah guides by it those who follow His pleasure to the paths of safety. This Quran, for the one who wants to follow Allah's pleasure, will be guided to the paths of safety. Safety from what? Safety from the harms in this life, of misguidedness, going astray, the fitan, all of the problems in this life, following the Quran, following the pleasure of Allah, i.e. His worship, will guide you to this path. And it will guide you to safety in the hereafter. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di goes on to say, فهو هادي لدار السلام مبين لطريق الوصول إليها مبين لطريق الوصول إليها حاث عليها كاشف على الطريق الموصلة إلى دار الآلام ومحذر عنها. Abdul Rahman al-Sa'di, he says, so this Quran is what will guide us to Dar al-Salam, to the place of peace, to the abode of peace and safety. It clarifies the path to get there. This Quran clarifies the way to get there. And it encourages us to traverse it. As well as the fact that it uncovers the path that will lead to the place of pain and torture. It uncovers that path and shows it to us clearly. And it warns us from it. This goes back to what we talked about, how the Quran is a criteria between happiness and sadness. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di goes on to say, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى مُخْبِرًا أَنْ كِتَابٌ أُحْكِمَتْ آيَاتُهُ ثُمَّ فُصِّلَتْ مِنْ لَدُنْ حَكِيمٍ خَبِيرٍ فَبَيَّنَ آيَاتُهُ أَكْمَلَ تَبْيِينٍ وَأَتْقَنَهَا أي إتقان وفصلها بتمييز الحق من الباطل والرشد من الضلال تفصيلا كاشفا لللبس لكونه صادرا من حكيم خبير فلا يخبر إلا بالصدق والحق واليقين ولا يأمر إلا بالعدل والإحسان والبر ولا ينهى إلا عن المضار الدينية والدنيوية. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he says in his introduction, Allah Azza wa Jal, He also says, informing us about His book, that it is a book, that its ayat have been founded, uhkimat, they have been confirmed, or they have been made sure and preserved. And then they have been detailed by one who is wise and aware. It is a book whose ayat have been founded and then explained in detail from one who is wise and aware. Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Sa'di says, so Allah Azza wa Jalla has clarified His ayat into the utmost of clarification. This Quran is clear. Its meanings are clear. The goals that it set forth are clear. The commands are clear. The prohibitions are clear. Its ayat have been made clear for us. There are no secrets, like some of the people try to claim that Allah sent down this ayat, but He didn't mean that, He meant this. And they try to give it meanings that don't carry possibilities based on the language. Instead, the Quran is clear. And Allah has perfected its meaning with the utmost perfection. And He has detailed it and separated or distinguished between the truth and the falsehood by way of it. And He has distinguished between correct guidance and misguidance. And He has detailed it such a detail that uncovers all ambiguities or all confusion. And the reason why this book was able to do so, why is this book able to clarify for us everything that's right and show us everything that's wrong, is because it came from one who is wise and aware. He is wise. He knows how to put things in their rightful places. So whatever the Quran calls us to is going to be making sure that we're doing things the way that they should be done. This is wisdom. وَضْعِ الشَّيْءِ مَكَانِهِ, putting something in its place. So the one who sent down this book is wise. So whatever he tells us is going to be the correct application, and he is khabir. He's aware. He's aware of the results that are going to come after that, or result from that. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he says, فَلَا يُخْبِرُ إِلَّا بِالصِّدْقِ وَالْحَقِّ وَالْيَقِينِ. So Allah doesn't tell us about anything except that it is truth, or that it is truthful and accurate and sure. And He doesn't command. So anything Allah tells us about us is truthful, accurate, and absolute. There's no doubt. And anything that He commands us with is justice and righteousness and goodness. And anything that He forbids us from is a harm for us in this life and the next. And this is something we should keep in mind, that we don't follow, or should I say, in our following of what Allah Azza wa Jal sent down, it's not just blind commands that have no value. The things that Allah tells us is the truth. And what has more right to be listened to and considered than the truth? Right? The things that Allah commands us to are just and good and righteousness. So it's not we don't dress the way we dress or act the way we act or do what we do just for the sake, but it's also, in addition to it being that Allah commanded us to do it, is that it's better for us. And the things that Allah forbade us from, it's not just because He wanted to do something to make our lives hard, but instead the things that He forbade us from have a harm in this life as well as the next. So all of these are reasons why we should be learning and understanding the Quran. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, وَأَقْسَمَ تَعَالَى بِالْقُرْآنِ وَوَصَفَهُ بِأَنَّهُ مَجِيدٌ وَالْمَجْدُ سعة الأوصاف وعظمتها وذلك لسعة معاني القرآن وعظمتها ووصفه بأنه ذو الذكر أي يتذكر به العلوم الإلهية والأخلاق الجميلة والأعمال الصالحة ويتعظ به من يخشى. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di also goes on to talk about the value of the Quran, and he says, and Allah Azza wa Jal swore by this Quran, and He described it as being Majid. And we all hear this all the time, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ مَجِيدٌ, right? And Majid, it means something that has a lot of qualities and great qualities. Something that has سِعَةُ الْأَوْصَافِ وَعِظْمَتِهَا, a lot of great qualities. I'm saying to you that from the things that the Arab do is that you know how important something is by the amount of names that it has. The more names something has, the more esteemed and valued it is. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءِ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And to Allah is the best of names, so call upon Him by them. This shows us the value of Allah, how esteemed and high He is above everything else. And likewise, from that also is His Quran. So His Quran has been given a lot of names and a lot of attributes. And from these attributes is Majid. And that means that it is that which has a lot of high qualities. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di says, وَذَلِكَ لِسِعَةِ مَعَانِيَ الْقُرْآنِ وَعِظْمَتِهَا. And this name of Majid, which means to have a lot of qualities and a lot of great qualities, this is due to the meanings of the Quran, the vast amount of meanings that it has, as well as the great meanings that are contained therein. The Quran is full of meaning. We learned in Durus al-Muhammad class that you don't get tired of the Quran due to the amount of meaning that it has. Every time you read it, it's as if you read it for the first time. And its meanings are great. It's not just something that has a simplistic meaning or an unvaluable meaning. Instead, its meanings are numerous and they're high and great in their stature. And he says, وَوَصَفَهُ بِأَنَّهُ ذُو ذِكْرٍ. And Allah described it as the Quran being that which is remembered, or that which remembrance is accomplished by way of it. I.e., the Quran is what is used to think about and ponder over the knowledge of Allah, al-ulum al-ilahiyya, wal-akhlaq al-jamila, the knowledge about who your God is and the knowledge about what are righteous qualities. All of this in a'mal al-salihah, righteous actions and good character, and knowledge about God or Allah, knowledge about Allah, all of these things are accomplished through the Quran. Knowledge about Allah, knowledge about good character, knowledge about righteous actions, and this is the goal of every human being. I say these are the things that every human being needs to know. When you look at everything that's important to you, it falls into one of these three categories. Knowledge about who your Lord is, knowledge about how to have good manners. How do you interact with other people? How do you interact with animals? How do you treat yourself? How do you do these things? And then knowledge of righteous actions. How do you obey your Lord after you know who He is? Everything that is important to an individual will fall into one of these three categories. Knowledge of who their Lord is, knowledge of good character, or knowledge of righteous actions. And all of that is understood and accomplished by understanding the Quran. وَيَتَّعِذُ بِهِ مَنْ يَخْشَى. And the Quran is that which the one who has khishya, or fear of Allah, takes his admonition from. The Quran, when you want to admonish somebody or stop someone from committing sin or stop yourself, then the reading of the book will stop you from these actions. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, وقال تعالى إن أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون. وهذا مهم جدا. Allah Azza wa Jalla says that verily we have sent it down to you, verily we have sent it down, a Quran in the Arabic language, that you could have intellect. That you could have intellect. Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di says, وَأَنزَلَهُ بِهَذَا اللِّسَانِ لِنَعْقِلُهُ وَنَفْهَمُهُ. So Allah sent it down in this language so that we could have intellect and understanding. That we could have intellect or comprehension of its meanings and the understanding of its meanings. Wallahi, this is why it's important for us to familiarize ourselves with the Arabic language. Because for the one who experiences these things, then he knows it all too well. That the fact that the Quran was sent down in Arabic language was from the greatest means that preserved this religion. Its meanings are clear. There's no confusion in it. Unlike the religion of Christianity or Judaism or all these other religions. Instead, the Quran was sent down in Arabic for a reason. And that reason was so that we could understand it. Likewise, Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di says, وَأَمَرَنَا بِتَدَبُّرِهِ وَتَفَكُّرِ فِيهِ وَالِاسْتِنْبَاطِ لِعُلُومِهِ وَمَا ذَاكَ إِلَّا لِأَنَّ تَدَبُّرَهُ مَفْتَاحُ كُلِّ خَيْرٍ وَمُحَصِّلٌ لِلْعُلُومِ وَالْأَسْرَارِ. He says, and Allah sent it down in the Arabic language so that we can have understanding and have intellect about its meanings. And He commanded us to contemplate it and to think about it and to derive benefit from its knowledge. And the reason for all of this is nothing other than the fact that in contemplating the Quran will be the key way or the key for all types of good. And it will be that which brings about knowledge in all of its forms, and likewise the secrets or the mysteries of life. When we think about why the Muslims were advanced when the Europeans and everyone else was in darkness, it's because of the Quran. By pondering it, thinking about its meaning, not just reading it qira'an, without thinking about why did Allah say this or why did Allah say that, but to think about its meanings and to understand it and to be able to derive benefit from it. Allah said this for that benefit. This is why Allah said it this way. Every word is put in the place that it's in for a reason. And this is, when you do this, it will open the door for all good. And you'll be able to accomplish all knowledge and all types of mystery. Wallahi, this is true. And they have a statement that they say that an individual who learns Arabic, his intellect is increased. And this is something that is mashhur. This is something that you can see when we look at, especially among the African American youth of America. And may Allah reward the brothers. A lot of them might have been in Jahiliyyah, criminals, uneducated. But when they learn Islam and they learn the Arabic language, you find them being from the most elevated and the smartest of individuals. Individuals who didn't graduate high school are now debating issues of the value of life and like DNRs and medical themes, and they're debating cultural issues and rectification of society from a bunch of individuals who didn't graduate high school. But all of this is through what? The fact that when they facilitated, all of this is due to the fact that when it was facilitated for them, the learning of the Quran, it increased their knowledge. And this is what the author Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di rahimahullah is saying, that in understanding the Quran and thinking about its meanings, it will increase your knowledge. And it will open up for you the things that others don't understand. The mysteries of life, the benefits, the values that are not obvious to everyone, they will become obvious to you due to what the Quran has. وَهَذَا شَيْءٌ شَاهِدٌ مَشْهُودٌ شَيْءٌ مَشْهُودٌ. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, فَلِلَّهِ الْحَمْدُ وَالشُّكْرُ وَالثَّنَاءُ عَلَى أَنْ جَعَلَ كِتَابَهُ هُدًى وَشِفَاءً وَرَحْمَةً وَنُورًا وَتَبْصِرَةً وَتَذْكِرَةً وَعِبْرَةً وَبَرَكَةً وَهُدًى وَبُشْرَى لِلْمُسْلِمِينَ. So after mentioning all of these qualities of the Quran, And of course, there are too many for us to memorize off the top of our head. But after mentioning the fact that it's a criteria to show the difference between truth and falsehood, right and wrong, happiness and sadness, and it's a cure for our hearts and a cure for our bodies, and that there's no doubt in it. Instead, everything in it is truthful, and that it's blessed, and it contains a great amount of knowledge and wisdom and a great amount of values for the individuals, and that it's blessed, and that by understanding it and acting by it and being guided by it, you'll get the happiness in this life and the next, and that it's a confirmation of everything that went before it. So the one who was a Christian or a Jew need not feel that he needs to give up, but instead, this book confirms for him everything that came before. And likewise, that it is the way that Allah guides people to safety, and it is the book that has been explained into detail by one who is wise and knowledgeable, and that when you understand it, you'll obtain knowledge. After talking about all of these qualities that the Quran has, Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he says, so to Allah is praise and gratitude and esteem for the fact that He made His book a guidance and a cure and a mercy and a light and a way to obtain clarity and a way to obtain remembrance and a way to be admonished and a way to obtain blessing and a guidance and a glad tiding for those who have Islam. All of these qualities demand from us that we praise Allah with our tongues, and that we show gratitude to Him by our actions, and that we esteem Him and we value Him as He deserves. Then Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he goes on to say, فَإِذَا عُلِمَ هَذَا عُلِمَ افتقار كل مكلف لمعرفة معانيه والاهتداء بها. Like we said earlier, Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di is mentioning all of these values for what reason? What's the purpose of him talking up the Quran in this fashion? Speaking highly of the Quran in this fashion, just so we can know what it is and how good it is? No. The reason why he's mentioning all of these qualities is to push us to something else or something extra besides just that awareness. And that is the acting by that awareness and the accomplishing of the meanings of the Quran. So he says, so when all of this is understood, then we understand clearly the need of every individual who is held responsible to understand the meanings of the Quran and to be guided by them. If you agree and understand all of these values of the Quran, then now you know how important it is for you not just to understand its meanings, but to also act by them. You know the value of the Quran, so know what it means and know how to act by it. ويقول, and he says, وَكَانَ حَقِيقًا بِالْعَبْدِ أن يبذل جهده ويستفرغ وسعه في تعلمه وتفهمه بأقرب الطرق الموصلة إلى ذلك. So when you understand this, you know how important it is to learn its meanings. And you know how important it is to act by it. And it was an obligation upon every servant that he spend all of his effort and he devote all of his ability in learning it and understanding it in the most easiest ways possible for him. It's necessary that you put great effort. You spend great effort and you free all of your ability in learning it and understanding it in whatever ways you can do. Whatever ways you can learn, whatever means you can use to learn and understand it, then you must take them. And i.e., this is the reason why this book is so important. He says, وَقَدْ كَثُرَتْ تَفَاسِيرُ الْأَئِمَّةِ رَحِمُهُمُ اللَّهِ لِكِتَابِ اللَّهِ فَمِنْ مُطَوِّلٍ خَارِجٍ فِي أَكْثَرِ بُحُوثِهِ أَنَ الْمَقْصُودِ وَمِنْ مُخْتَصِرٍ يَقْتَصِرُ عَلَى حِلِّ بَعْضِ الْأَلْفَاظِ اللُّغَوِيَّةِ بِقَطْعِ النَّظْرِ عَنِ الْمُرَادِ وكان الذي ينبغي في ذلك أن يجعل المعنى هو المقصود واللفظ وسيلة إليه فينظر في سياق الكلام وما سيق لأجله ويقابل بينه وبين نظيره في موضع آخر ويعرف أنه سيق لهداية الخلق كلهم عالمهم وجاهلهم حضريهم وبدويهم. Shaykh Abdul-Rahman al-Sa'di, he says, after talking about how important it is to learn, so what of them, and he tells us that we need to find the easiest means or whatever means we can use to get to understanding it and acting by it. What are the means that we can use to understand and act by the Quran? No doubt from the means that allow us to be able to understand and act by the Quran is the Tafseer. understanding its explanation. He says, وَتَفَهُّمِهِ بِأَقْرَبِ طُرُقِ الْمُوَصِّلَةِ إِلَى ذَلِكَ, and understanding it with whatever are the simplest, with the closest means available to you. From the closest means available to us in understanding the Quran is tafsir. So he says, and indeed the different tafsirs of the scholars, may Allah have mercy upon them, are plentiful. So some of them are long and detailed. And in a lot of their topics, they go outside of the scope of the ayah. They talk about things that aren't directly connected to the ayah. They talk about issues of fiqh, and they talk about issues of history that aren't necessarily directly intended by the meaning of the ayah. And other tafsirs are summarized. The only thing they talk about is what the linguistical meaning of the verse is. They don't talk about what did Allah mean by it or the value of it as it was revealed. So they don't look at the intended meaning. And Shaykh Abdul-Rahman as-Sadi says, so what was more suitable regarding all of this is that a person pay attention to the meaning, and that they only consider the wordage as a means to accomplish that goal. Meaning that some tafsirs are very detailed. They talk about everything, and some of the things that they talk about don't have anything to do with the particular ayah directly. And other tafsirs are so summarized that the only thing they explain is this word means that, this word means that. But they don't talk about the value or the goal behind that ayah. But what should have been done is that the tafsir should be given about what is the intended meaning of this verse. And using the wordage of the verse as nothing more than a means to accomplish that meaning. And so one should look at the context of the ayah or the speech. And why was the statement said? And he should compare between it and between other statements similar to it in other places. And by doing so, he understands that all of this was only said, meaning that the Quran was only revealed to guide mankind. Guide mankind, all of them. The ones who have knowledge and the ones who are ignorant. The ones who are advanced and the ones who are, Bedouin, like country. You know what I mean? Like they're not advanced, the non-advanced. The backwards, if you want to put it, compared to advanced. The point of it is that this is the kind of tafsir that he set out to do. A tafsir that focuses on not the extracurricular or the extra themes, the things that connect indirectly to the ayah, and not a tafsir that's so small as only going to tell you the word for word explanation, but he's going to travel a path in between to talk about the meaning of the ayah in general. So he says, فَالنَّظْرُ لِسِيَاقِ الْآيَاتِ مع العلم بأحوال الرسول وسيرته مع أصحابه وأعدائه وقت نزوله من أعظم ما يعين على معرفة وفهم المراد منه، خصوصا إذا انضم إلى ذلك معرفة علوم العربية على اختلاف أنواعها. فمن وفق لذلك لم يبقى عليه إلا الإقبال على تدبره وتفهمه وكثرة التفكر في ألفاظه ومعانيه ولوازمها وما تضمنه وما تدل عليه منطوقا ومفهوما. فإذا بذل وسعه في ذلك فالرب أكرم من عبده فلا بد أن يفتح عليه من علومه أمورا لا تدخل تحت كسبه. Right, so he talked about the type of tafsir that should have been done, and he says, and from the things that make that tafsir possible, that type of balanced tafsir possible, is that one should look in the context of the ayah. You know, what's the general context of the ayah? And he should have knowledge about the life of the Prophet ﷺ and his situations. What kind of situation was he in when this verse was sent down? Likewise, his relationship with his companions as well as his enemies, because this allows you to understand these meanings better. What kind of situation did he have with his companions and his enemies at the time this verse was sent down? Because these will be from the greatest things that will assist an individual in understanding it, i.e. the Quran. And it will allow him to comprehend its goals or its intent. Especially if you add to that an awareness about the Arabic language and the different types of it, i.e. the different types of sciences that connect to the Arabic language. So whoever has been given success to these things, then the only thing left to do after you know these things is to read it. And you're left free to ponder its meanings and to think about it, its wordage and its meanings, and what they necessitate, and what they include, and what they prove, what they say directly or what they prove by what's understood. And when you spend your effort in this, then your Lord is more generous than you are. It's necessary that when you do it this way, He's guaranteed to open for you affairs that you wouldn't have been able to understand them on your own. Basically what he's saying in this paragraph is that this is how we should be approaching the tafsir. We should be approaching it by trying to think about the context of the ayah. And the context of the ayah is based on the life of the Prophet. What kind of situation was he in? What kind of situation was his companions in? His enemies when this ayah was sent down? What was going on surrounding this ayah? And when you add to that the Arabic language, because that's why the Quran was sent down in the Arabic language, once you put these two things together, this is what will facilitate and open up for you that ability to be free to think about the Quran and to ponder it and to gather its meanings after that. So this is the steps you want to, familiarize yourself with regarding the Quran. And basically this is what he's going to talk about in his tafsir. So he goes on to say, ولما من الباري علي وعلى إخواني بالاشتغال بكتابه العزيز بحسب الحال اللائق بنا أحببت أن أرسم من تفسير كتاب الله ما تيسر وما من به الله علينا يكون تذكرة للمحصلين وآلة للمستبصرين ومعونة للسالكين وقيدته خوف الضياع ولم يكن قصدي في ذلك إلا أن يكون المعنى هو المقصود ولم أشتغل في حل الألفاظ والعقود لمعنى الذي ذكرت ولأن المفسرين قد كفوا من بعدهم فجزاهم الله عن المسلمين خيرا. So he says, after mentioning all of that and how you should go about doing tafsir and the things that will facilitate for you the ability to understand its meanings well, he says, so all of that being the case, and due to what Allah had, the originator has blessed me with, and likewise my brothers, from having the ability to busy ourselves with his great book in a way that's suitable for us, I desired that I write a tafsir about the book of Allah in a way that was simple for me due to what Allah has blessed me with. And this book would be a reminder for those who have already learned. If you've already studied tafsir and you've already accomplished it, then this book will serve as a reminder to what you already learned. And it would also be alatan lil-mustabsirin. It will be a tool to be used by those who are seeking insight. Right? If you haven't learned these things and you're trying to get insight as to what was the meaning of the Quran in this place, then this book will be a tool to that. A reminder for those who have learned and a tool for those seeking insight. And it will be a form of assistance for those who are trying to travel the path, i.e. the path of worship. So it will be a reminder for those who have accomplished, a tool for those seeking insight, and a means of assistance and support for those who are traveling the path of worship. This is his goal in putting this Quran, this tafsir together. And he says, and I wrote it down fearful that it might get lost. So this is why I wrote it. I didn't just leave it in, classes given. And my intent in this Quran was only to explain its meaning in this tafsir. Was only to explain its meanings, what is intended. And I'm not going to busy myself with explaining the wordages or the sentence structures and things like that. So his tafsir is a good tafsir to begin with, and this is why we chose it in this class. As we said, we try to choose those books that are suitable for a beginner, because he's only going to tell us what we need to know to be beginners in studying the science of the Quran. And he says, so I didn't busy myself with explaining the wordaging or the sentence structure due to what I've already mentioned about i.e. how tafsir should be done. And also because the other people of tafsir have already been sufficed in this matter. They've already given enough of this, so may Allah reward them on behalf of the Muslims well. And then the Shaykh, he says in his closing paragraph, وَاللَّهُ أَرْجُو وَعَلَيْهِ أَعْتَمِدُ أَن يُيَسِّرُ مَا قَصَدْتُ وَيُذَلِّلُ مَا أَرَدْتُ فإنه إن لم ييسر الله فلا سبيل إلى حصولي وإن لم يعن عليه فلا طريق إلى نيل العبد مأمول وأسأله تعالى أن يجعله خالصا لوجهه الكريم وأن ينفع به النفع العميم إنه جواد. تنبيه: اعلم أن طريقتي في تفسير أني أذكر عند كل آية ما يحضرني من معانيها ولا أكتفي بذكر ما تعلق بالمواضع السابقة عن ذكر ما تعلق بالمواضع اللاحقة، لأن الله وصف هذا الكتاب أنه مثاني تثني فيه الأخبار والقصص والأحكام وجميع المواضيع النافعة لحكم عظيمة، وأمر بتدبره جميعه لما في ذلك من زيادة العلوم والمعارف والصلاح الظاهر والباطن وإصلاح الأمور كلها. هذا نهاية مقدمة Shaykh Abdul-Rahman As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala fi tafsiri. He says in closing, and Allah is the one I hope from, and upon Him I rely, that He make what I intended to do with this book easy, and He facilitated for me what I have intended. For verily, if Allah doesn't make it easy, then there's no way to accomplish it. And if He doesn't assist me, then there's no path for for any servant to accomplish his goals. And I ask Him, the Most High, that He make my action sincerely for His sake, or for His face, and that He make it beneficial in a form that is general for everyone. Verily, He is Jawad, or generous. And then he says in closing, and have knowledge that I want to draw attention to the fact that my methodology in giving tafsir in this book is that every ayah I'm going to mention whatever I can think about at that time that relates to that ayah. And I'm not going to be sufficed with what we've already said, what we've already mentioned in previous ayah, and use that in place of what comes in future ayah. Basically what he's saying is that with every ayah he's going to tell you everything that he can think about at that time, and he's not going to refer you back to, we already spoke about it in this ayah, or we already talked about it in that ayah, but he's going to re-talk about it again and again. And he says, and the reason why I do this is because Allah described His book as being mathani, or being repeated, meaning the stories in it, and the information given in it, and the rulings in it. All of this has been repeated over and over. The stories and the rulings and the information in the Quran is something that is repeated over and over. And in all of these places, it is beneficial. And it has a great wisdom behind it. And we've been commanded to ponder it over and over, meaning in all of these places, we've been commanded to ponder it. So what he's saying is, I'm not going to say, go back to this ayah when another ayah comes like it. Instead, we're going to talk about it again, because we've been commanded to think about it again. And the Quran in itself is something that repeats its themes. And he says, and in doing so, we'll get an increase in our knowledge and in our awareness and in our righteousness, whether it be openly or inwardly, and a rectification of all our affairs. So this is the end of the muqaddamah, or the introduction of Abdul-Rahman As-Sa'di to his tafsir, Tayseer al-Karim al-Rahman, في تفسير الكلام المنان في تفسير كلام المنان. And as we said, this was just an introduction. There are no points that we want to draw emphasis to, except that an individual will go back and familiarize himself with the values of the Quran and the importance of it, so that he can understand why it's important for him to learn it and keep himself encouraged in the classes to come. And when we come back next class, we'll start with Tafsir Surah Al-Fatiha. And just as a reminder, the tafsir will try to take it in the fashion of the Masahif al-Kuwaitiyya, the Kuwaiti Mus'haf, that has the Quran broken down into topics and sections of topic, which usually is approximately about 10 ayah, so we can try to apply the methodology of the Sahaba in learning it. So if an individual wants to know how the class will be, then it will usually be broken down upon that methodology, that every time in the Kuwaiti Mus'haf where they break the topic down, then we'll try to do one of those a class. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Is there any questions about any of this? If not, سبحانك اللهم وتفضل. The English version of Tafsir al-Sa'di, you can probably order it online. I know Dar al-Salam has it. It's expensive though. It's like Might be like $60 for one book. It's one book. But it's on Try Dar es Salaam in New York. They got it. It was there when we went to KC. It was there. It was there. It was there. It was like 50, something like that, 54 there. Yeah. So, I mean, like I say, the first 6 surahs are translated. Surah Al-Fatiha, Baqarah, Ali Imran, Nisa, Ma'idah, and Al-An'am, I believe, are all translated already. And so if an individual has that, then I mean that would be a good resource for him to use with this, because for the most part this class will be nothing more than a reading of the book, and if there's an unclear statement, you know, in translation, then we might expound on it the same fashion that we did today. But I'll try to leave myself out of it as much as possible. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.